have a female down. She's been shot several times. He fired 9 shots, so I don't know how many hit her.
She was able to give a description.
There was a man in a silver car, a Chevy.
As the day progressed, another call came in.
The guy just shot some people. You could see the smoke from his gun.
The second shooting within hours. Things like this just don't happen around here.
Just minutes later.
Timothy County 911.
I'm at Kalamazoo Cracker Barrel. 2 cars have been shot up. It's a blue HHR.
Obviously, a dark colored car doesn't make sense to us. We just didn't know if there was a link or if there were different shooters, but the body count is growing.
This was a brutal execution.
Half of our family was gone.
There was no reason in this.
I know you want an explanation. If you guys only knew, it would blow your mind.
Boom, 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 boom.
'I've lived in Kalamazoo my entire life. Kalamazoo is one of those cities where it's small, everybody kind of knows each other. You have a little bit of a mixture between country, you've got a little bit of city. I live in an apartment complex called the Meadows.
It's a large community, lots of children, and the playground was right by where we live.
I was just at home. It was a good Saturday just to kind of chill out, and all of a sudden you could hear pow, 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 pow. You don't hear that around our place.
I'm cooking and I didn't know what was going on until I saw my daughter Joy and 11 screaming children flying through my door. It took them a while to say someone is shooting. This little girl, she kept saying, "Where's my mommy?"
I have been a firefighter now for 15 years and ended up running outside.
I just ran out there and I ended up finding a woman wedged down beside a curb.
You could see where the bullets had hit her. I had no clue who she was.
She was just laying there, shot up. I instantly started praying. She looked lifeless, you know. I didn't know if I was looking at a dead body. But she was able to speak. I knew I had to let her know the kids were okay. And so I said, I have them, you know, I know you don't know me, I live here, that the children that were with you, your child, your children are okay. And then I called 911.
County emergency.
Hello, I need an ambulance. Please hurry up. Somebody shot T on the ground.
Where is the person that shot her?
I don't know. The car sped off. Please.
Okay, ma'am, we're going to get the people going there.
Please don't move. Just stay there. They coming, okay?
We're in the complex. We have 1 shot.
On my way to work, I heard the report of shots fired and someone being struck at the Meadows apartment complex. I know from being out there multiple times that there's a lot of families and kids that are out there. So listening to the call, initially I started thinking, there's probably some sort of domestic relationship that was involved, and maybe there was some sort of fight that occurred beforehand that we just didn't know about.
Officers started interviewing witnesses. The victim had been walking children on a sidewalk area. An individual pulled up to her in a vehicle and shot.
There was a man in a silver car, a Chevy.
One of the neighbors identified the victim was 25-year-old Tiana Carruthers. As Tiana Carruthers was being treated for her injuries, she was able to give a description of the driver.
County 321.
The shooter is described as having a chubby face with blondish hair that's combed down and a silver, smaller semi-automatic handgun.
He fired 9 shots, so I don't know how many hit her.
Or Be on the Lookout was put out to the public for a silver Chevy with the description of the driver. But we were searching for any type of motive we could figure out, because just everywhere we looked, we weren't really finding one. The deputies and the detectives and the crime scene techs from the sheriff's office continued their investigation and collecting all of the forensic evidence, interviewing witnesses, doing a canvass, As the day progressed, another call came in.
911, where's your emergency? Hi, we're on Business 94. We passed the Kia dealership when a guy just shot some people in the parking lot. There was a man standing there pointing a gun at two people lying on the ground. We could see the smoke from his gun and hear it as we drove by. Okay. All right, ma'am. I'm going to go ahead and get an ambulance on the way. Did you happen to see anything else that you can think of as far as a description of the male? I just know that he was white and had like a full head of hair, probably light-colored gray or blonde.
I'd say Kalamazoo is a very safe town. We don't normally get multiple acts of violence in a short period of time. So having 2 shootings within hours, this seemed unusual. Initially at the Kia dealership, not knowing what was going on, we had other officers that had rifles, had guns out. They were looking, hey, is this somebody that was shooting from a distance? Is this somebody that's still here?
Just FYI, it's possible there could be other victims here. There's rounds all over, so.
As I was walking up to the scene, I noticed first responders doing life-saving procedures on an older male and a younger male on the ground. They look like they are about the age of a father and son.
I had heard that a father and son had been shot at a car dealership on Stadium Drive. I went home, and my husband, Rich, wasn't there. And that's when my heart sunk. And so I dialed 911. I, asked him, was it my son? And, was it Rich and Tyler Smith? And the police officer said yes. And I said, are they alive? And he said, no, I'm sorry, they didn't make it.
This was a brutal execution of 2 people. And it is the second shooting within hours. Things like this just don't happen around here. The car dealership had a very high quality video surveillance system. You could clearly see that it was a shorter, heavy set male with glasses, and his vehicle was readily identifiable as a dark colored Chevrolet HHR. But we could not obtain a license plate from that video.
I go back to check with command to let them know, hey, what can I do now? Do I need to start processing the scene while we wait for the crime lab to get there? Within just a few moments, all of a sudden the report comes over the radio.
Kalamazoo County 911.
I'm at Kalamazoo Cracker Barrel. 2 cars have been shot up and 1 guy is not moving.
There had been 2 shootings in one night, and then we hear on the police radio that we had just had another shooting.
We need this thing roped off now.
We walked up on this red sedan. This one obviously had bullet holes in it. I looked in the driver's side and I recognized that there was 2 older women in there and there was no pulse on either one of them. It was at that point I see him in the minivan as another victim. So I reach in and realize that that victim is deceased as well and there's no pulse.
There's a female in the back seat, driver's side.
We're conducting life-saving procedures on a small child.
I need an ambulance in here as soon as I can.
We grabbed this small child out. We realized pretty quickly that she's in really bad shape. Got her in an ambulance and got her out of there.
Any similarity?
Possible suspect vehicle, Chevy, blue HHR.
We knew that earlier in the day there was a silver Equinox involved in the shooting that was in the Meadows apartment complex, but this is the second shooting that involves a dark-colored HHR. We didn't know if there was any possibility that there was a link between the first shooting and the second shooting, but these 2 events were related.
Whoever the shooter is, we have to get them off the street as quick as we can.
There's an active shooter out there, and his body count is growing.
Manhunt was underway to find the person pulling the trigger.
The person's either going to flee in a car or there's going to be a gunfight.
I don't know how much I may have done or not done.
You kind of had to take a breath and ask yourself whether that just really happened.
On Saturday night in Kalamazoo, a woman is shot several times in a parking lot at an apartment complex. She survived but is in serious condition. At 10:08 p.m., Richard Smith and his 17-year-old son, Tyler, are shot and killed at a car dealership. And at 10:24 p.m., 4 women, all over the age of 60, are shot and killed at a Cracker Barrel. A 14-year-old girl was also shot but survived. A manhunt was underway to find the person pulling the trigger.
I was scared. My biggest concern was for my own family. I wanted them to be home and safe, but I had to change gears and come in and start helping to investigate this case.
20, but I believe he's on detection.
It certainly seemed like the Cracker Barrel shooting was connected to the shooting at the car dealership, but at that point we didn't know if all three shootings were possibly related.
But when we got a description of the driver at the Cracker Barrel and from the car dealership, that was similar to the suspect description at the Meadows.
So now we're thinking the shooter from all of the scenes could be the same person. The suspect possibly switched cars from the first incident to the second and third incident.
If you're standing here, boom, 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 boom.
We were looking for any evidence that might point to the identity of the shooter, but our biggest goal was to put a stop to these shootings.
Due to the fact that it's a Saturday night, we knew that there was going to be a lot of people out. They could be our next set of victims. There's an active shooter out there, and his body count is growing. Let's go find this guy and let's get him off the streets before he hurts anybody else. We know what kind of car we're looking for. A black or dark color Chevy HHR.
Campbell and partners on TX getting further.
As I was patrolling, I was talking to a sergeant from the Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Department, and he told me, hey, I think I got it.
Still northbound, stop to Kalamazoo. Just wait for everything. Now it'll be lighted up.
I then got on the radio and told him, hey, I'm right behind you. Go ahead and light it up.
But if this is actually the shooter, there's only a couple of ways that this is going to end. The person's either going to flee in a car, and we're going to get in a pursuit, or there's going to be a gunfight.
The driver eventually stops the black HHR.
Driver, take your hands off the window!
The deputy had the driver step out of the car. I stayed as a cover officer.
And when they took him out of the car, they started to search him.
Gun.
And as he pats him down, he finds a gun on him.
Rifle, caliber's 9mm, handgun, probably 14 shot. Also semi-automatic.
Based on the fired cartridge casings that were recovered at the scenes. We had 9mm at all of them, which is the same caliber weapon he had on him.
He matched the description of the person we're looking for, driving the car that we're looking for. Oh my gosh, this is the guy. And he never said a word, just stood there. And it was just an eerie feeling.
He has one in custody, one weapon off of him.
File check was run on the license plate, and it was determined that it was registered to Jason Dalton. He's transported to Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety headquarters. Even still at that point, with him in custody, we were concerned with the Silver Equinox as well, because we didn't know where it was, we hadn't seen it, and we just weren't sure that he was actually responsible for the shooting at the Meadows.
They heard short 4 shots. Did not see any.
Detective Girangelli and I look into Jason Dalton's background quickly before we begin the interview with him.
We could not find anything on why these shootings happened. Take your sweatshirt off there, please. Yep, go ahead. Underneath his sweater, he is wearing a bulletproof vest. That was a bit alarming.
That makes me think he planned and thought about this before he did what he did that night.
The main focus of the interview was to find out if there's any other victims, if there's more crime scenes, that this has been put to a stop, and that everybody in this community is now safe.
Is there anybody else that needs any medical attention that we might not know about?
Can I just plead the fifth?
Oh, yeah.
In this case, like many defendants do, and as every person has the absolute constitutional right to do, Mr. Dalton tried to exercise his right to not speak anymore.
Detective Maureen and I eventually left the room and had a conversation with several other detectives and superiors. There was a risk in continuing the interview with Jason Dalton, but there is a public safety exception to Miranda rights. We definitely walk a fine line, but it was determined that we would continue to question him based on the public safety exception.
There could have been other victims out there suffering that needed medical assistance that he had shot. This is just for public safety. How many different locations did you shoot people at today? Just so we know we're not missing one.
I could not fathom somebody laying in a ditch, and they cannot get help.
I know that isn't the case.
There's nothing to confirm that. We need to know more. Let me ask you this. Are you married?
Yes.
Children?
Yes.
They're all alive and well and healthy?
It's common when a mass shooting happens that the suspect has done harm to their own family and then harmed the general public. We still did not know if his family was safe. So we asked him to make a phone call to his wife. Hopefully the family is safe.
Hello? Hi, honey. What's going on? I just wanted to hear your voice, sweetheart. I'm gonna let you go, okay? Bye-bye. All right.
It was an odd exchange between Jason and his wife, but there was a sense of relief there knowing that the family was safe. Once that phone call with Jason's wife was concluded, he reverted back to the previous answers. He was not providing any insight onto why these shootings happened. The only information we had was he appeared to be an average person.
He has no criminal history, and there's no history of mental illness, there's no history of medications. There was just nothing there.
None of this seemed to make any sense. It seemed like there had to be a reason on why an average person with a family and a full-time job would just start driving around a community and killing innocent people. It was a mystery to us.
I'd like to just not discuss it.
It seemed to be at somewhat of a standstill, and right around that point, Detective Don McGeehee from the Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Office came in and explained to us that he knew Jason Dalton.
He ran the Explorer program for youth that Dalton's son was in at the Sheriff's Department, so the decision was made to have Detective McGeehee go back in with me.
Hey, Jason.
Hi.
How you doing, man?
Good, how are you?
The goal was to get more out of Jason, and with Detective McGeehee, it was the best chance because he knew him.
You alright tonight?
Yeah, not really though, but...
What's going on?
Jason sees him and obviously recognizes him.
But we had no idea what Mr. Dalton was going to tell us.
I know you want an explanation.
Yeah.
If you guys only knew, it would blow your mind.
Kalamazoo police are saying they have apprehended one suspect in the wake of today's shootings, but more questions than answers tonight. How many victims remain unidentified, and is the city still at risk?
At this point, we had videos of Mr. Dalton and his vehicle at the Sealy car dealership and the Cracker Barrel store. Some showed different things, some were better than others, but we were very confident that we had the right person.
The main focus of Jason Dalton being in that room is to find out if there's any other victims, that this has been put to a stop, and that everybody in this community is now safe from these shootings.
I know you want an explanation.
You can get one.
Because you're not this guy.
No.
If you guys only knew, it would blow your mind.
Okay.
Okay.
At that point, we were hoping that he would finally completely break the ice wide open and give us a full version of events.
I recognize the symbol that's on Uber.
Uh-huh.
Could you bring my phone up to me so I can see it?
I have the Uber thing on here.
Can I see it, please?
He starts by saying that he just started becoming a rideshare driver. That's when all the problems started.
On Uber.
Uh-huh.
When I clicked it, it went tink. And then there was like a double head that popped up. And I pressed that button. And that's where all the problems went after that.
I'm like to myself, all right, here we go. And he's maybe trying to set up that he's insane.
I've experienced the full body takeover. It literally has control of you. I would have never done any of these atrocities that have happened.
Right. There's no history of mental illness. There's no history of medications. There was no reason in this.
It's important for the detectives to take the information and not visually react to it, because he might completely shut down in front of you. But everybody else in the monitoring room knew it was nonsense.
We continue to ask questions about the app and how does it take over your mind, explain the app to us. And that was, our way of getting him to continue on. And what made you get your firearm tonight? The app, the Uber?
Yeah.
Is that what made you put the vest on too?
Yeah. Do you remember shooting people?
There's like little spots where it pops in and pops out.
He wouldn't give us specifics, but this was the first time that he admitted his involvement in these incidents.
I mean, you're looking at this guy that just killed all these people, these strangers that have nothing to do with anything. I mean, just random strangers. I mean, for somebody to go from nothing in their life, no contact with police, to this, and then to show this no lack of emotion, I mean, I've never seen anything like it. Never seen anything like it in my life.
At this point in the interview, we decided to take Jason Dalton's clothing from him. It would be used as evidence, and we provided him with a standard issue orange jumpsuit. Even though up to this point, Jason Dalton was giving a story that was not believable, he was talking.
I do remember the Cracker Barrel.
Oh, the restaurant. Okay. What do you remember about that?
I never even aimed.
You just went like that?
Yes.
You remember doing that?
I remember that it just kind of had me, you know what I mean? I don't know how much I may have done or not done.
If you think of anything, can you let us know?
Sure.
We didn't believe that we were going to get anything else out of Jason.
Jason did tell us that he was the only shooter during this incident. The biggest thing was that the public was safe and that there wasn't anybody else out there that was going to be doing any more shootings. So it brought a sort of a sense of relief. But at that point, based on his statements, we had some concerns that he would be setting himself up for an insanity defense down the road.
We knew there was a chance he might claim that he didn't know what he was doing, that he wasn't acting in his right mind as it's defined by the law. He was taken back to the Kalamazoo County Jail.
Mr. Dalton? I'm going to pat you down real quick.
While he was there, Michigan State Police investigator Kyle Gorham conducted a second interview with Mr. Dalton.
Jason, I'm Kyle Gorham. Just call me Kyle, okay? Is that all right? That's fine.
My goal was to show that Mr. Dalton had a clear sense of thought. He knew what he was doing.
So you already explained that you understand the rights to me. So I'm just going to read them to you this time? Okay.
After what occurred in the first interview, I advised him I still wanted to Mirandize him, why we're getting him his Miranda rights. And then I asked him very directly if he cared to sit and talk with me, which he granted, so he consented to speaking with me.
I think that the line of questioning you were going to ask me would be fine.
Okay.
Then I started the interview process with him right from there.
So walk me through this. What starts happening now?
Okay.
My focus isn't on asking why he did what he did, because I didn't want anything to shut him down. It's about showing not that he was insane, but he was very cognizant of what was occurring.
It felt like I was on fire. This is the really scary part, is I go down in my basement where I have my guns, and I'm like a robot. I'm just putting guns together.
And he acquired what he advised was a Glock 19 9mm handgun, and he went back to work as an Uber driver.
There's some apartment complex. I go by this woman and I ask her if she's McKinney, and she says, "No, I'm not." "Why do you ask?" And I'm like, "I'm the Uber driver." And so then I go down and I go around again, and then I reached in, I grabbed my Glock, and go up. I just had to go like that, and it was like
Automatic?
Yeah, it was like it just had me. I know I killed her, because how could you survive that many gunshots?
He thought I was dead, but I made it.
I know I killed her, because how could you survive that many gunshots?
He thought I was dead. Oh, goodness. But I made it. I made it.
You shot her multiple times.
I believe that I dumped the whole magazine there.
I remember hearing the gunshots coming from behind me. And the first bullet hit me in my left arm from behind. Then I got shot in my right leg. I just went down. And then the third bullet hit me in my left leg. I was laying face down. I kept trying to get under the truck that was next to me, and he just kept shooting. When I realized that he wasn't gonna stop shooting, I laid there pretending like I was dead. Then a bullet hit me. I just remember feeling the bullet bounce inside of my stomach. It was the worst pain. You're trying to live. You go into this survivor's mode. I just kept telling myself, I haven't seen my daughter grow. I haven't seen the world. My sister, she's gonna go to prom. I'm gonna see her graduate. I'm gonna make it. I'm not gonna die today.
Tiana saved my child's life, her child's life, and there were kids on the playground too that ran because she screamed, "Run!" So there's lives that she saved that nobody even realizes.
I just remember describing who this man was and how it happened because I didn't know if I was gonna make it, and I wanted to make sure that, they caught the bastard who shot me.
At that time, the connection was not made with that prior shooting until Jason Dalton admitted his involvement in that interview room.
After Jason shot Tiana Crothers, he's driving at high rates of speed.
Then I pull in the garage.
And this is where?
My mom and dad's house.
Okay. Do you think at some point in time that the police would have been looking for that car? At that moment? Are you thinking about that?
Yes.
Okay. Why did he do that? Well, he did it because he didn't want the police to see. He's hiding it. I want him to acknowledge what he did, to show that he was aware of what was occurring.
I go down, I get a bag, and I put my guns in take them out of one car and put them in the other.
He switched cars and took his wife's black Chevy HHR and then went back to Ubering.
Jason Dalton made a conscious decision to change vehicles after that first incident. It showed that he was thinking, he was rational, he was trying to cover his tracks.
And then where do you go?
To the car dealership. I drew my gun and I shot those two people.
Did they talk to you at all?
I think they said hello or hi or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I shot them.
My husband and son were shot and killed. Rich and I shared just about everything with each other. He was an amazing person.
Tyler, well, he's my baby brother, so I had to kind of show him the ropes. We had sibling rivalry, but we also depended on each other for literally everything.
How am I gonna do this life without Rich and Tyler? Half of our family was gone.
After the Kia dealership shooting, Jason Dalton, he goes to the Cracker Barrel where the final incident occurred.
I get out, and I walk up to this lady and I ask her if she could spare $1. And she told me that she didn't have the $1 to spend. And I shot her. And I heard people scream. And then I shot some people in a car. I left there and went to my house.
Okay. And your purpose for that was what?
To get more bullets.
Did you do that?
Yes, I did reload a magazine. I know that they'll think of me as a monster, because what I've done is kind of monstrous.
The statements that he made were very important because not only did they personally put him there, but at the point we thought he might claim some sort of insanity, his interviews with Detective Gorham showed that it wasn't just one spree where he went out of his mind for 30 or 45 seconds, that this was something that happened over 6 or 7 hours, that he was doing rational things in between. That makes it very difficult, in my experience, to claim insanity. And now it's our job to make sure he would never have the opportunity to leave prison.
Dalton's attorney argues the 2 interviews Dalton gave to police should not be allowed at trial.
He said that Mr. Dalton tried to stop these interviews and was not allowed to do so, and his constitutional rights were infringed upon. This was a really terrible situation.
Take it, take it, take it, take it, take it.
Is there anything you wish to tell the court at this time?
I would prefer just to remain silent.
Investigators seized no less than 11 weapons from his home. He was charged with 16 counts in all, including attempted murder of a minor.
After Mr. Dalton was arraigned in Michigan, you have a right to a hearing before the trial. It was impossible not to be moved by the emotion of the scene. Everything was so fresh. We had the victim's family there. We had the actual victims, specifically Tiana Carruthers, and Jason Dalton was going to walk in the room, walk in the cameras for the first time. The 50 or 60 family members and witnesses that were there were going to be feet away from the person who had injured them, or in most cases, their loved ones.
It was really hard to see him. He walked right in front of us.
It's just like evil just walked in and you literally can feel it.
Let me call your first witness for examination.
Nobody really knew what was going to happen.
Call Tiana Carruthers.
It was only 3 months since I had been shot. I just kind of felt like the weight of the world was on my chest and I needed to go testify. I just felt like it was my responsibility to do it for me and for the others that had passed away.
We were concerned about Tiana because she had been through something so horrible so recently.
It felt like just yesterday I was gunned down and then I was in a courtroom to face this man.
So, Ms. Carruthers, are you okay?
Take it, take it, take it, take it, take it.
It was just so hard.
None of us expected to hear his voice, and especially not poor Tiana.
The judge decided that based on that outburst, Mr. Dalton had waived his right to be physically present, so he was taken back to the jail.
Something just snapped at me right then and there.
Tiana was extremely upset, but to her credit, she was able to regain her composure and get back up on the stand and really, really bravely tell what had happened to her.
I just remember just shooting, and I just remember I tried to move, but I couldn't move. I tried to get under the car.
Do you see the person who shot you?
Yes, I do. I could never forget his face. Ever. It was just a roller coaster of emotions, but I had to send him away.
She said, I am going to do this in memory of all the people that are no longer here. This guy will not get away with this.
Knowing that she's gonna see this man who tried his hardest to kill you, but she did it. That took a whole lot of bravery.
Fortunately, the judge thought we had enough evidence on all of the counts to get every single count against Jason Dalton bound to trial.
The attorney for Jason Dalton says that he'll use insanity as a defense.
If the court allows for an insanity defense, jurors would have 4 verdict options: guilty, not guilty by reason of insanity, or guilty but mentally ill.
It's important for us to do everything we can as part of the process to ensure conviction, ensure that justice is being done.
The statements that he made were very important, especially his interviews with Detective Gorham showed his knowledge of what he was doing, his forethought, the fact that he understood what he was doing was wrong and continued to do it anyway. I didn't know what could happen, what might happen, but I knew exactly what Jason Dalton did, and he needed to be held accountable for everything.
Mr. Dalton understands the nature of the charges against him. Mr. Dalton understands the potential penalties if convicted of these crimes. Mr. Dalton is able to assist his attorney in defending this case. The defendant is competent to stand trial, and this case will proceed on to the next stage of the criminal process.
Fortunately, it was decided that in this moment he knew what he was doing, and as such, he was competent to stand trial.
We wanted to get this over with. We were looking forward to knowing what really happened that night beyond what we saw in the video. We were looking forward to going to trial.
In this case, it always felt like one thing led to another. You know, there was always a next thing. But what happened next was literally probably the worst case scenario that we could have imagined.
Family and friends of the victims were in court to hear the arguments. The dispute is over the contents of 2 interviews with Dalton following the shooting spree.
Mr. Dalton's attorney challenged the Miranda warnings, that Mr. Dalton tried to stop these interviews and was not allowed to do so, and by that, his constitutional rights were infringed upon and should not be used in the case.
Both investigators who took the stand say they read Dalton his Miranda rights.
25 times he says he doesn't want to speak. 15 of those times, he actually mentions the word the fifth.
Is there anybody else that needs any medical attention that we might not know about?
Can I just plead the fifth?
Oh, yeah.
At the time he invoked the fifth, did you feel like you had enough information to be confident that the people of Kalamazoo County were safe from further harm?
Absolutely not.
There is a public safety exception to Miranda that I lay out and cite in my brief, and that's what they were following.
The public safety exception was created just for situations like this. The detectives in this case felt that public safety was at stake. They didn't know if he was part of some bigger group or ideology or some act of terror. They didn't know whether there were other victims laying somewhere bleeding that could have help. That was all information that they were trying to get from him that night.
And the questioning, as you will see, it's not because they're concerned about public safety. They're interrogating my client.
Dalton's lawyer argued once Dalton said no to waiving his rights, a second interview initiated by investigators was unconstitutional.
The Court of Appeals found in our favor, so there was some sense of relief. But Mr. Dalton's attorneys took it one step farther and appealed again.
The officers never even give him an opportunity to breathe.
No decision from the court here today. That won't come for at least a few weeks, only further dragging out a lengthy legal process that's now nearing 2.5 years.
The prosecuting attorney, they kept us informed along the way. You know, if it comes back this way, this is what happens. If it comes back the other way, then this is what happens. We had to prepare ourselves for whatever came.
Another delay in justice. The Michigan Court of Appeals ruling today that statements made by accused killer Jason Dalton cannot be used at trial.
You kind of had to take a breath and ask yourself whether that just really happened.
Another delay in justice. The Michigan Court of Appeals ruling today that statements made by accused killer Jason Dalton cannot be used at trial.
Lori Smith spoke to us about the appeals court decision.
I trust that they will get justice to be served. I am just wanting this whole thing to be done, as I'm sure you can imagine.
We had to make a serious decision about whether or not we wanted to appeal it back to the Supreme Court. We consulted with the victims.
Our initial reaction was, oh my goodness. But then after we talked to the prosecuting attorney's office, when the next delay came and the next delay came, we trusted them because we knew that they were doing what they needed to do to make sure that this person was convicted.
At this point, the case had been carrying on for 3 years. The victims wanted to bring the case to justice sooner rather than later. We were finally ready to go to trial.
Court calls the case of the people of the state of Michigan versus Jason Brian Dalton.
And then on the last day of jury selection, something happened.
Court has been informed that there has been a resolution in this matter. Is that correct? Yes, Judge.
Everything stopped. Mr. Dalton let his attorney know that he was interested in pleading guilty. Maybe this is all over.
He does not want to put his family or the victim's families through the trial.
Jason Dalton pled guilty to every single count against him. 6 counts of murder, 2 counts of assault with intent to murder, and the accompanying weapons charges.
He was a coward to the end, even the way that he chose to plead at the last minute.
the last thing to happen was a sentencing.
There's a number of victims and victims' families who wish to make impact statements here today.
I was fortunate at the sentence to be in the closest chair to the victims who were at the podium speaking, and they were all so beautiful and eloquent in their own ways.
Nothing can prepare someone for the phone calls my brother and I received February 20th, 2016.
I've lost the woman I've married for 41 years.
I turn around in my home and call their names out of habit when I wish to share something with them. I yearn for someone to talk to, but not just anyone, but my husband or my son.
In December of 2016, I got married. I walked down the aisle alone, holding a box with my brother and my dad's ashes in it.
She strove to be the best version of herself and her friends. My goodness, Barbara had friends everywhere.
The fact that they chose to focus on the beauty of the people who were killed and not the horror of what Jason Dalton had done.
My name is Tiana Carruthers, survivor of Jason Dalton's crimes.
Tiana has endured so much with this, but yet she still smiles, she still inspires, she still cares, she's still being a hero.
I'm standing here in your face, in front of you. How does it make you feel?
This man thought that he destroyed her, but what he did was he made that hero even stronger.
I see pain in your hatred. Your pain is contagious, your rage is heinous. You spread it like a disease. Who do you think you are? I have nothing else to say.
That day felt like now you're in front of all of us. You're not just picking us off one at a time.
Mr. Dalton, you may stand. A conviction of murder carries the punishment of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. You understand that?
Yes.
I still didn't have any more idea of why he did it than the day I woke up and was looking at the news and found out what had happened here.
We were hoping to learn the why, too.
And we probably never will know why. And even if we did know why, it probably wouldn't be good enough.
This case, in so many ways, brought out the strength of the Kalamazoo community. And on the top of that list is the law enforcement folks who worked on this case. We had 3 different departments at 3 different scenes. They all worked together, and their only goal was to do what was best for the case.
I had been so struck by the amount of people that came to visitation, that came to funerals, all the things that people did. How do I repay them? And I'm like, I have to give back. That is the whole purpose behind Forever Strong. Putting on events so that we all can be strong together. And by doing that, it's like a family.
It's our way of focusing on the good part of their life versus how it ended.
Tyler realized how important living each moment was.
He's like, I might not have tomorrow, so I'm gonna live every single day to the fullest. I'm so glad that he did.
For more about Criminal Confessions, go to oxygen.com.
There had been an elderly woman that was assaulted in her residence.
I've seen a lot of things in my career. I can't believe someone could do that to another human.
She is one of the most important people that I have ever had in my life. I couldn't breathe.
It was like a shot in the heart.
In the neighborhood we're in, it's a bad neighborhood. That's not every day the night that I should stay home.
I know that Mama got $6,500. She doesn't trust anybody.
I just need you to be honest with me. I'm gonna tell you everything.
I was not certain that she would survive her injuries.
You know what's wrong? I know where you're going. I can't confirm none of that.
We
knew beyond a shadow of a doubt he was lying to us.
Me and God had to have a conversation about all this.
I can't believe it. Where's your emergency? My mother's bloody. I don't know what happened. I just got in.
Slow down for me, okay? Where is she bleeding from?
I don't know. It looks like the head.
Is she conscious?
Mama stopped. Yes, she's moving around, but she's trying to touch the scars, and I'm trying not to let her do it.
What is your last name?
What?
Your first name?
Lee.
And how old is your mother?
She's 60.
All right, Lee. We've got your paramedics that can be en route shortly, okay?
On April 7th on Sunday morning, I got a call from Lee Watts, who I was dating at the time. Well, he was frantic. He told me that Mama had been hurt, that there was blood everywhere, and I told him to hang up and call 911. My son Jameson and I got in the car and we drove quickly. When we got there, it was surrounded by police and an ambulance with flashing lights. Lee was sitting on the porch with his head in his hands, and I ran to him, "What's going on? What happened? What happened?" And he said, "Someone attacked Mama." His mother was his world. It just broke him.
When I arrived at the house, I went in to see if there was anything I could do to assist Lee Watts' mother. There was no apparent damage to the door like there had been any forced entry. Blood all over the bed. I saw her laying in the bed. She was gurgling. A lot of people call that the death rattle. If you hear the death rattle, it's going to be pretty bad. She had a lot of damage to her head that you could see. It wasn't a nice sight. I began to notice blood splatter on the ceiling that is indicative of a blunt object being used. If you strike someone, and then when you raise it to strike that person again, a trail of blood can fly off the end. I've seen a lot of things in my career. I can't believe someone could do that to another human.
Ethel Darlene Adamson was a silly, over middle-aged pixie. She was known by everybody who knew her as Little Mama. I had just got through a divorce when I met Mama. And Mama was the light at the end of the tunnel. She is one of the most important people that I have ever had in my life. I have a son, Jameson, and he was 2 at the time. She was like a grandmother to him.
She was a very sparky person. She was always upbeat. She walked in the room and you felt that you were around somebody that you could trust.
Ethel is an amazing mother to everybody, but Lee was her pride and joy. He was the light of her life.
Lee loved his mom. If she asked him to fly to the moon, he would have gone.
On the 4th of July, Mama brought Lee Watts to my house. I liked Lee Watts immediately, and we started dating. When the ambulance left, Jay ran after it.
I tried really hard to catch it. I couldn't. And Lee ran behind me and he caught me before I got too far down the road. I don't know.
Lee picked Jameson up and held him and told him everything was going to be okay. But to see your child run after his grandmother, it was devastating. Lee was definitely in shock.
Looking at the scene, I felt a heavy responsibility because I was not certain that she would survive her injuries.
Lee Watts and Vicki Hodges agreed to meet me down at the police department. I just needed to sit down and talk to them and get as much information as I could.
I kind of want to find out just a little background about Mom a little bit. Does she date or any just friends in general that come over often?
No, sir.
Alright. Explain to me, like, what's your living situation? You say you don't live there necessarily?
Stay with Mama 3 nights a week, and stay with Victoria 4 nights a week. This last night happened to be the night that I should have stayed home.
During this time, homicide detective Eric Ewing would conduct an interview with Vicki Hodges to see if there's any corroborating statements or any indiscrepancies in their stories.
So you and Lee, you were saying a boyfriend, girlfriend?
Yeah, we've been dating since, he says July, I say August, so. And yes, I know about his record, and I know he's been in prison, and I know all that. And I also just think everybody deserves a chance.
I had known Lee Watts for a number of years. I'd arrested him in the past for some burglaries, but I'd never known him to do any violent actions himself.
I have to tell you, there's no drugs, there's no alcohol, there's no anything you smoke outside, and it better only be a cigarette in my house, or we do not date.
When I met Lee, I could tell he was really making an effort to do right. He was attending church, he was making money, he was providing rent money for Mama. He tried really hard to let the past be the past.
Sitting down with Lee initially, my approach was to just let him explain to me where was he the night before, how did he leave his mother, just try to get as much information as I could.
Just prior to you leaving, you say you left at 12 p.m. How long had you been there yesterday?
I was with her up until 12 o'clock last night. That's when I went to the warehouse.
Lee told us that prior to the morning when he found Ethel, he had been out scrapping metal at the old Frosty Mourn building all night and had fallen asleep inside the building before waking up and coming home that morning.
He's working really hard. He is scrapping, and he does have several contracts to do work, and he's been doing really good.
Vicki Hodges told us that she was aware that Miss Adams had gotten a VA settlement that had to do with the death of her husband fairly recently, that could possibly be a motive for somebody to have broken in with the purpose of stealing that money.
I know that Mama got $6,500. I know she called me and told me. Now, she wanted to keep money around the house, and she doesn't trust anybody, and I told her to go put that in the bank.
She had told me she had got a settlement from about a VA, but she never told me how much, because I told her, it's not my business, Mom, it's your money. I don't want to know anything about it. And I didn't. She's been out every day this week, or every day since she's gotten the car, buying things.
So she bought a car?
Yeah. Went to Walmart, buying, ran all the groceries.
300 groceries?
Yes, sir. In the neighborhood we're in, it's a bad neighborhood. And she's going out every day buying new things.
Mama couldn't afford 2 or 3 cases of Diet Dr. Pepper, which was her favorite. But when she got that money, she went out and bought 20 cases. Oh, they were on sale, girl. Don't you even worry, she told me. And I told her, Mama, you cannot do that. Don't buy a lot of stuff and take it in bag after bag after bag. Don't do that. Because there were people in that neighborhood who would rob you for a dime.
There were leads to follow, leads to develop.
6 was another familiar character.
He kept coming back with money.
How much?
Hundreds.
We found a claw hammer.
Something bad happened to his mother.
I don't know.
Did he sound,
He was scared to death.
There had been an elderly woman that was assaulted in her residence, and robbery was probably the motive for that assault. The victim was a female named Ethel Adamson. Ethel was still alive, but hanging on by a thread. There were a number of people that could have been potential suspects, people in the neighborhood, other people associated with Ethel that we may not have been aware of. While we were interviewing Vicki Hodges and Lee Watts at the same time, it really just came down to needing boots on the ground trying to gather information. Vicki was concerned that neighbors might have seen Ethel Adamson as behaving slightly out of the usual coming into the large amount of money that she had. So I instructed a crime scene team, in addition to processing the crime scene, to search the entire house to see if cash was hidden anywhere in the house.
We looked in all of the places that Vicki said the money may be. There was no money in the house to be found, but on the living room floor in Ms. Adamson's house, there was a claw hammer.
The hammer, while out of place, it wasn't gory or graphic. and it doesn't jump out as the weapon that was used for the assault.
The crime scene team still collected the hammer so that it could be examined by the criminal lab to see if it had any blood or trace evidence on it.
In similar cases, when we've sent off evidence to be processed for fingerprints or DNA, it has taken weeks and months to get results back from those analysts. Interviewing Vicki Hodges and Lee Watts separately and at the same time, we're able to get a baseline of any information that they're able to provide from the night before, as well as that morning.
So you worked at the warehouse for how long last night?
3-4 hours. There's a mat down there, I just lay down on the mat and sleep.
And then you woke up around what time?
Around 7:38. I came home, it was around 9 o'clock. As I went to put the key in the doorknob, it just pushed right open. That's when I stepped in, I heard Mama gargling and stuff like that, so I immediately went in there, and that's when I found her. First thing I done was call baby girl. She's a retired RN. Yeah, then I called 911.
The fact that he first called his girlfriend Vicki Hodges prior to calling 911, I thought it was very odd, not normal thing. His explanation was that she was a nurse and that he thought she could give good advice. As we're talking more, he says the last person he spoke with that night when he was scrapping metal was Vicki. He actually made a call to her on his cell phone. He says that he did not make any calls between then and the time that he went home to find his mother.
Can I grab your phone and you and I take a look at it together? You good with that?
I took that opportunity to ask him if I could see his phone to corroborate what he was saying.
Your call log starts at 9 o'clock. What happened to all the calls prior to that?
Prior to Vicki's call that morning at 9 o'clock, all call history was non-existent. And the 911 call was singled out and deleted. I immediately thought it was weird. If that was deleted, what else could have been deleted? Was he purposely hiding something?
Where's all the rest of the calls from last night?
I must have come out last night. I have a tendency to clean my phone out.
Okay, do you recall erasing it this morning?
No, sir, I don't. I called 911 from that phone.
Okay. I'm not doubting it. I'm just curious what happened to the call log is all.
One of the advantages of having interviews going on simultaneously is when one of the investigators in one of the interviews finds out a key piece of information, they're able to stop and relay that information to the other investigator, and that may be a piece that they can use to really break the case.
He called 911, but then he removed the call from his phone to 911 out of the call log?
It is a little odd, but he may have been shaken. I don't know.
Did he sound,
He was scared to death. That phone, he was high-pitched for him. Now, I have to tell you, y'all know Lee's record. I know Lee's record. He hadn't held anything from me. He would never, okay? Let me state that from the depth of my soul. I know him, if anybody does, and you can take that to the bank. I wanted Detective Ewing to know how good Lee was. This man is going to church. He is paying his bills. He is providing for his family. I knew Lee would never harm the only one who ever lifted him up.
I had just this thought of when you and I will come in here, we'll be able to discuss details and everything's going to make perfect sense. You see what I'm saying? It just, now that I'm in here, it just is slightly confusing, especially when it comes to the phone. You see where I'm coming from?
I knew that he was leaving out information. It was at this point that I decided to change my strategy and actually confront him with the inconsistencies that did not make any sense.
Your mother was already in bed by the time you left, right? Yeah. And you locked the doors in, deadbolts, everything. Yes, sir. You walked to the warehouse. Is there anybody that knew that you were going to the warehouse?
Yeah, my girlfriend knew I was going back to the warehouse.
Okay. Why at midnight?
That's when I get most of my work done.
Why?
It's just easier and cooler in there to work.
Did you work with anybody last night?
No, sir. I work alone.
Normally, Lee goes to the warehouse. Sometimes he'll leave at 11, sometimes he'll leave at midnight.
How does he usually get home, though?
He walks.
What were you wearing when you went back to the warehouse?
I was wearing these black slacks and that purple shirt.
Were you wearing the same shoes?
Yes, sir.
Why so dressed up at 12 o'clock at night and scrapping metals?
I think I was going to go to church this morning.
What does he normally wear when he works?
What he has on, except for his dress pants. He had his dress pants on because he was going to church, and his purple shirt's probably still on the porch. He had already changed probably at the warehouse.
So everything Lee Watts is telling us, although it seems a little off, is backed up by Vicki.
How long ago did you buy that shoe?
These were given to me by a friend.
But you worked at them last night?
walked around in them down last night.
What does that mean? You walked around?
Just picking stuff up, putting it in piles. Really not any hard labor.
I'm going to pick for the phone.
It did stand out to me that he was wearing these nice clothes, these nice shoes, and there were no scuff marks, no dust, no dirt. At this point, I decided to just be quiet and create a moment of silence and give him an opportunity to feel that silence with anything he might want to say.
Can I say something? You're not taking this the wrong way, Detective.
Please.
I respect you doing your job. And I've just got this funny feeling that, I don't know.
You got the feeling like I'm accusing you?
Yep. I love my mother with all my heart. I would never lay a hand on her this way.
I do not doubt it. Do not doubt it at all.
In this early stage, we had to consider just about anybody a suspect. But in the back of my mind, it stuck out to me like he felt a little bit guilty. After interviewing Lee Watts, Detective Ewan and myself decided to take Lee to the warehouse.
Detective Duke and I wanted to check out Lee's alibi.
When we arrived, Detective Ewan and I walked with Lee to the front of the building. It's an abandoned building that had been boarded up, and there was a piece of plywood that was covering a hole in the wall. Lee claimed that was his entrance. He crawled through the hole. He came to the front door, and as soon as he opened it, I could see that his pants were immediately dirty and dusty, and his shoes were scuffed. Immediately, I knew there was no way he could have been wearing those exact clothes to scrap metal in that building. It was at this point that he was the number one suspect. To me, it was clear that Lee Watts was not given 100% of the truth, but the investigation was still fresh. There were leads to follow, leads to develop. We started talking to people in the neighborhood to see if anybody had seen anything or heard anything.
One neighbor recounted seeing Lee at the home about an hour to 30 minutes prior to police being called.
The gentleman next door said to me that he had seen Mr. Watts leaving the house about 6 in the morning. That didn't sit real well with me because that's not the way I understood Mr. Watts' original story.
On April the 9th, we learned that Ethel Adamson had passed away in the hospital. I personally was kind of heartbroken. This mother suffered the way she did and couldn't speak for herself. I felt a sense of responsibility to find out who did this to Miss Adamson. And this immediately changed the investigation from an aggravated assault to a homicide.
When I heard that Ethel Darlene Adamson had left this world, I couldn't breathe.
I didn't know what to do. It was like a shot in the heart. I took it pretty hard, for sure.
As lead investigator, it was my job to meet with Lee in person where he was working that day and inform him that his mother had passed away. He fell down to his knees in grief and had implored me to find his mother's killer.
Part of most investigations, if there are phone records that can be used to assist in the investigation, we subpoena those records. On April 11th, we received the results from the subpoena of Lee Watts' phone activity and phone records. We found that there was a lot of activity on the phone, and the phone's location had traveled a larger distance than just the area that Lee claimed to have been at all night.
This was a critical point in the investigation because we knew beyond a shadow of doubt he was lying to us. There was one number that stood out to us on the records because it was called multiple times that evening. It ended up being Jesse Buckley. So I called the number, and he subsequently agrees to come in and speak with us. We did learn that Lee often went by the street name of Frog.
You know Frog?
The white guy from thing on that. I ain't heard of him, but I met him one night.
Jesse quickly explained to us that he was approached by Lee, and that Lee was looking to buy drugs to party that evening.
He was like, hey man, y'all know where to get something? So I told him where to get something.
But you took him?
Yeah.
Okay. How much money do you have on him? Do you remember?
Oh my goodness. He kept leaving, gonna get money. Kept leaving, gonna get money. But he told me he'd text me once he get the money.
Lee was in fact not just in one location, but he was bouncing around all over the place. And we knew that Ethel had gotten several $1,000s, and that Lee is just not known for carrying a lot of money around. It appeared to us now that Lee had been taking her money to supply his drugs.
Something bad happened to his mother.
I know where you're going with this. I don't know.
Okay.
I can't confirm nor deny. All I know is that after he kept going and coming and going, I left the house. I know he's supposed to have went to A&W Hotel after that. This girl named Six, she said she was gonna call y'all.
He went to the hotel with Six.
You know Six?
Yes.
We knew Six, and we knew Six as Satara.
Six was another familiar character in the District 2 area, so we were able to locate her relatively quickly.
Knowing that she was there, knowing she was with Lee that night, we knew that talking to her was our next step to see if she could give us another piece to this puzzle.
I just need you to be honest with me. This last Saturday night, Sunday morning, there was a dude you were with, you remember his name? A white dude? Frog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That whole night, finna tell you everything.
Okay.
He was buying dope. He kept coming back from his mother's house getting dope. Coming back with money, getting dope.
How much?
Hundreds.
What was he wearing that night?
He had a t-shirt and some jeans on.
Just t-shirt and some jeans? Always the same thing from the first time you saw him to the end?
No.
What do you mean?
Different shirts every time he came back.
In our mind, there's only one reason why he would have changed his clothes, and it was because he may have victimized his mother and got blood splatter all over him.
He just said he just wanted to smoke in peace. He got some more dope from the little dudes. We went to the room.
To which room?
A&W.
Okay.
Yeah, because I said you did something wrong. I don't know. I got that intuition sometimes. And I told him whatever it is, God bless him and still forgive him.
And what did he say?
He started crying.
This really takes us to almost a point to where we believe he would have had a natural reaction to victimizing his mother and feeling bad for what had just happened.
Did Frog himself pay for the room?
Yeah.
He did?
Yes.
Well,
we checked in at, it was 4 or 5 in the morning.
4 or 5, okay.
And then after that, he said, I'll be right back. And it was like 8:30. I'm going to my mom's house to get some more money. That's what he said.
Did he ever come back?
Satara further corroborated what Jesse had told us about staying at the A&W motel. We were able to send investigators over to that motel and confirm through their records that he had purchased a room for that night.
He did something to his mama, didn't he? I can feel it.
We're trying to figure it out.
That's scary.
Jesse Buckley and Satara, both of them were very forthcoming in our interview. And everything that we've developed absolutely points right back to Lee. We know Lee is lying to us, so we need to confront him on his broken alibi to get him to tell us the truth.
So the cell phone records showing that Lee wasn't where he said he was could have just been the fact that he was ashamed or scared to tell Vicky that he had been out partying or in fact been out with other females. So given the phone records and the new information, I wanted to bring Vicky back in to confront her with the information. Vicky's a pivotal person because since the incident, she has been with Lee almost 24 hours a day, and she would be a first-hand account of his behavior and actions since the time his mother was found.
Okay, and you all have spoken obviously a whole lot since this whole incident happened.
I didn't tell him. He asked me point blank if I thought he was guilty.
Would you tell him?
No, because I don't.
I want you to tell me where in your heart, based on what he's told you, what you feel or whatever, Lee spent Saturday night before coming home and finding his mother Sunday morning.
at the warehouse. I wouldn't believe him any other way.
Okay.
I'd always believed that Vicky cared about what happened to Ethel and wanted to get justice for Ethel. I just felt like Vicky had unintentionally been providing a security blanket for Lee, and it was my plan to take that security blanket away.
Do you love Lee?
No.
Did you love little mama?
Absolutely.
And you told us that Saturday that if we figured like we felt like we knew it hurt her, that you would accept
You give
it.
me 1 ounce of proof and I'll help you.
All right.
You understand me?
But
son, you better have it.
Okay, now I want you to listen to me.
I'll never forget it. He said, Miss Vicky, you said that if we had even a breadcrumbs worth of evidence against Lee, that you would do whatever we ask. And he said, I have a whole loaf.
I'm going to tell you that Saturday night, Lee was in the projects, using drugs and tricking with prostitutes.
And you know that beyond a shadow of a doubt.
I'm going to go bring you Lee's phone records.
Okay.
All right.
I want you to do that.
Hang on a second.
Because then I may have to go home and sit down and be sick.
Okay, you hang on a second.
Okay.
He left the room, and me and God had to have a conversation about all this.
Lord, it just can't be. I'm sorry, Father. It just can't be. He would not do this. I can't, Lord Father, I can't. I can't believe this. Lord Jesus, Father in heaven, this just cannot be.
I stepped back into the interview room, and she and I went over the phone records together. You could see realization slowly starting to set in with her.
What I want to point out to you is one particular phone number.
I don't know that number.
No, you don't. Belongs to a guy named Jesse Buckley.
Don't know him.
You don't know him. You're right. Lee gives him $200. They score Lee
Didn't have that much.
Follow with me.
I'm on it.
They score Lee $200 worth of dope. And Lee has smoked all the dope at his house. So they're working on getting some more dope, and Lee goes and gets some more money. And Lee provides more money, and they smoke more dope. A girl named Six. Do you know who Six is?
No, never heard of that one.
Eventually, Lee and Six leave and go to the A&W motel and get a room.
It was absolutely important that she just hear the cold, hard truth about what he had actually been up to that night, and the fact that he had a whole bunch of money to be able to do it with.
So what you're telling me is you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the man I've let around my child and in my home
I'm going to let you draw
my best friend.
I'm not done. I'm going to let you draw your conclusion. I think he's crashed.
Been in my home.
I think
He's been in my
I
home.
understand that, Vicky.
He killed my best friend. Okay, I can't handle any more today. I'm sorry, I cannot.
All right, just hold tight for me for just a second, okay?
I will be sick in just a few minutes.
Okay, you want the bathroom?
No, I just want to.
Vicky, tell me what you need.
I want my friend back. I need.
He lied to me. He told me he was innocent. He told me he didn't do it. He told me he loved his mom. He told me he would never hurt his mom. He told me he loved my son. He told me that everything was going to be okay, that he was going to be all right, and that he was going to be who he said he was. And he lied. And if he lied about that, then he lied about hurting someone that I loved more than my own life.
We're going to resolve this tonight, I feel like. But if for some reason we don't, this is what I want to tell you. And I know it hasn't been intentional, but you have provided protection for Lee.
I didn't mean to.
I know that you didn't, because you believed in him. But you have to understand what I'm saying. You're the only one. This is where we are.
I wanted her to know that there was nothing at this point in time she would be able to do to assist or help Lee anymore. That what's done is done, and for her sanity and for the sake of her child, she needed to get up and remove herself from the situation.
You've given me the ounce I asked for. I'm going home now, if that's okay.
I felt bad for Vicky and her son Jameson because they had both become so close to Lee and trusted fully in him. I never really had a doubt about Vicky, but at the conclusion of this interview, it was 100% clear in my mind that she had no knowledge before or after about what Lee Watts had done to his mother Ethel.
When I left that room after talking to Detective Newman, I got out the front door of the police station and collapsed in the parking lot. I did not make it to my car.
Even with everything that we've developed thus far in the investigation, it's really important to push Lee towards a confession. There's enough evidence to detain him, but if Lee Watts doesn't confess, we could lose the whole case.
You swear 100% hand to God this is the truth?
Yes, sir, yes.
You swear?
Everything on hand to God. It's all the truth.
And at the warehouse, I kind of smelled some bullshit. Give me the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Because we are investigating the murder of your mother.
I love my mother with all my heart. I feel like that it's the same questions over and over and over. It's running me dry.
Whether he confesses or not could determine the outcome of the case in court. My plan is to become more confrontational with him and work towards that confession and work towards the truth.
My right hand on the Bible of God, I am telling you the truth.
If you can sit here and look me in the eye and say, my right hand on the Bible of God, telling me the truth, you're not the kind of person who I thought you were. I thought that you had some shreds of dignity left. I thought you felt remorse and guilt for what happened to your mother. You asked me yourself, catch my mother's killer. And I can tell you who your mother's killer was.
Please do. It's not me, sir. I didn't do anything. I didn't kill my mother. I love my mother.
I had accused him of murder at that point, and I wanted some shock value. I placed that picture in front of him so he can admit it not only to me but to himself, because it's a pretty heinous act.
And what I told you right on the piece of paper when you took your notes is the truth.
This is such a bullshit lie. Lee, it's ridiculous. It's insulting is what it is. It's a homicide investigation. You think I don't know where you went? What times you went there? You had this in your pocket. You are lying, Lee.
I'm trying to bury my mother in a respectful way. I'm being accused of something I haven't done.
Lee, you were smoking crack that night with these drug dealers, laid up with a prostitute. Hotels keep records. We have the cell phone records with the cell site tower locations and all that. So you can talk all the shit you want, but I can prove. Walking over here, walking over there. And then, hey, he was over here talking to this person. Let's go talk to them. Oh, yeah, you had all these hundreds of dollars. You gave Lee crack. Boy, you sure have a reason to lie, huh?
I didn't have $100 on me, sir. I didn't have more than $25 on me that night.
Crack dealers don't take credit, Lee.
You say that's bullshit. There's no disrespect to you. I think this detaining is bullshit. I don't think we have any evidence right now.
It's not one thing, Lee. It's building on top of building, on top of building, on top of building, until we have a friggin' mountain of evidence that points to the killer.
And you're saying all it points to me?
Yes, sir.
After continued denials, I decided to use minimizing words and frame his intent differently. It's a lot easier to say out loud that you knocked your mother out than full-blown murdered her and caused her death.
I believe you love your mother, Lee. I see it on you. And some of the things that I think about when I think about a man like you, dealing with the stress that you deal with, having the past that you've had. So maybe you didn't even mean to kill her. Maybe you just thought you were knocking her out, like you see on the TV 100 times. Hit someone in the back of the head, boom, they're passed out. So maybe that was your intent. But if that's what it is, you need to tell me that. Because if it's not what it is, it looks a whole lot worse.
All I can sit here and say, sir, is I love my mother from the bottom of my heart. I did not calculate anything. I didn't want her money. I've always told people I don't want my mama's money. All I want was my mama's love, and she gave that to me, and I gave it to her.
Okay, if you didn't calculate harming her, how did it come to pass?
How did what come to pass?
What did you hit her with?
I didn't hit her with anything because I didn't do this.
I try to appeal to Lee's higher self. If you hold somebody to a higher standard, sometimes they'll step up to that standard and hold themselves to that standard as well.
We all make mistakes. We all have low points in our life. But what determines the type of man we are is how we proceed from this point on now.
Can we have this conversation after I bury my mother? Because I know what happened that night.
I think you need to tell me what you have on your mind. We can't wait to hear that till after you bury your mother.
But I'm doing this for my mother.
I'm doing this for your mother.
You're detaining the wrong one, sir.
Who should I be detaining?
I don't know, and I want to help.
I want Lee to feel like the walls are closing in on him, and the only option that he has is the truth.
I didn't kill my mother, okay? Yes, I smoked a little dope that night. Sounds like the job to kill my mother.
admitting to a little bit of drug use was a huge development because it was a polar shift from his total innocence. We were a lot closer to the truth, and it was time to just let him talk.
I got back to the house. I came and called what time it was. Mama was asleep. I went around the other side of the bed. I reached up on her pillow and I got Mama's money. I never hit my mother in the head. Daddy, please believe me. But I tell you, I never hurt my mom this way.
And I believe a lot of what you're telling me. I think it takes a lot of personal courage to talk about the things you're talking about, and you have my respect.
But you still believe I did. You still believe
I don't believe that you meant to hurt your mother.
Dad, I just sat here and told you the truth.
Yes, you did. There's just
one piece missing.
It's not easy to admit to things that make you look bad for anybody. I feel like acknowledging that is important, but not relenting in the fact that we need to end with the ultimate truth.
I didn't do this. I didn't do this. I didn't do it.
Lee, you can tell yourself that all you want. It doesn't change the facts.
You could visibly see the change in his demeanor and his posture. He looked defeated and visibly worn down. What he can't say with words, he's saying with his body.
Can I smoke a cigarette? Please?
We can go ahead and smoke a cigarette, but I gotta have you in handcuffs while we go out there.
There was a lot of intensity and a lot of pressure and a lot of coming around to more of the truth from Lee, so I felt that honoring his request for a cigarette and taking a break was a reasonable request.
I have to have somebody with us, for security purposes.
During the smoke break, Lee crouches down and leans up against the door, so I just kind of knelt down beside him. He'd been sitting for 3 hours speaking with Detective Ewing, and now he's talking to a different voice. And he just broke. He admits to me at that point that I hurt my mama. He had said the one thing that he never wanted to say.
So Lee just confessed to hurting his mother. Big problem, we didn't have it on recording. And in today's world, if it's not recorded, it didn't happen. We are 5 days in the investigation, and we had worked very hard to get Lee Watts to a place emotionally and mentally where he's able to confess, but it's outside on a break when he chooses to do so. I had the delicate task of getting him to restate on camera the hardest words that he's ever said in his life. This is literally the moment of truth.
I admire your courage and your bravery and your self-sacrifice for being able to tell the truth, and I know it hurt. But we need to finish up and then be able to move on.
Came back, she was asleep. I sat around for a few minutes, and I went in and I hurt my mom.
He expresses that he hurt his mother, which I feel is a minimization of the act, but I'm okay with, because that's what he needs to say in order to be able to say it out loud. And he's still taking responsibility for his actions. Regardless, it's a confession.
Why do you think you hurt her that time?
I don't know. I really don't know.
So you didn't plan it out or anything?
No, I didn't plan it out. I didn't.
But how did you hurt her?
I don't know how many times I've been banged with a hammer.
To perpetrate an act like that on a total stranger would be heinous, but for the person to be your own mother, it's unfathomable.
I just wanted somebody to love me. A hug, a kiss on the head, especially from my mother. All I wanted to hear were those 3 words. I love you, but it never hurt.
It was offensive to me personally that he would try and make himself somewhat of a victim, because in all the time that I've known Lee Watts, wherever he fell down in life, Ethel was always the one to pick him up and at a minimum allow him back in her house and put a roof over his head and food in his mouth.
I feel like obtaining that money so he can go party was what drove him to commit the act that night. And had he not been in that situation, had he not been doing drugs, Ethel Adamson would still be alive today.
When Lee Watts confessed to killing my best friend in the world, my sister in faith, I can honestly say I knew hate for the first time.
I felt betrayed. Like, how dare you? You hug me and hold me and tell me it's gonna be okay when you did it.
The DNA analysis and the fingerprint analysis on the hammer revealed there was Mrs. Adamson's blood, DNA, on the hammer, but there were no prints linking it to Mr. Lee Watts, her son. Mr. Watts' confession was very important in returning the verdict.
When the jury watched the confession of Lee Watts, you could tell by the body language of almost the entire jury it was over. The confession of Lee Watts was definitely the keystone to this case. It made this case.
I do not recall Mr. Watts showing any remorse or emotion during the trial.
The jury convicted him of first-degree felony murder and convicted him of especially aggravated robbery. Lee Watts was sentenced by the court to life with 25 consecutive. His parole date is 2077.
We see a lot and do a lot in this profession, but still the memory of a son that was able to kill his mother with a hammer, it sticks with you forever.
I can't fathom why a son would do that.
This case was very important to a lot of people, so having the resolution at the end was extremely important for the family, but it was also important for the investigators involved in this case. In the end, I believe Ethel Adamson got the justice that she deserved.
For more about criminal confessions, go to oxygen.com.